Hello and welcome to the Analytics Show, the podcast of business through the lens of data science. But together, we'll dive into learning and sharing where various industries are heading and how data and analytics is at the heart of shaping business growth and productivity. Let's spark different ways of thinking about data and analytics that is relevant to you and prepare your business for future disruption. I'm your host, Jason Tan. I'm delighted you could make it on this journey with us. Hey guys, to continue to get support tips, techniques, and tools and learn from the expert, hit that subscribe button wherever you are so we can keep in touch and continue our lifelong learning together. So, are you using your company data to its full potential? Take our embedded analytic assessment to find out your score. A leading organization like Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, and Google have moved beyond dashboard and embedded data science directly into their daily business operation. With our 3-minute test, you will discover your potential in optimizing customer experience and revenue through embedded analytics. You will gain greater clarity, insight, and advice to embed analytics. Plus, you will receive customized results instantly. Find the link to this assessment in the description of this episode. Hello, Sarah. Welcome to the Analytics Show podcast. So excited to have you here and chat in a range of topics that is happening in your world. I'm so excited. Welcome.
Thank you, Jason. I'm excited to be here. It's not every day I get to talk data analytics.
That is good that I'll make sure that you share enough some of those things that is exciting in your world and that the listener can benefit from as well. Now, before we go into some of those heavy topics, I read that you received these Alf Kretschmer Award.
Yeah, gosh.
Am I reading right?
Yeah, Alf Kretschmer. Blast from the past, that is.
Wow, from Queensland Cancer Fund some years ago.
Long time ago.
The story behind this?
Yeah, so in a previous life, I was a registered nurse and I was one of the last groups of nurses to go through the hospital training system before it transitioned to university. And in the very first time I ever set foot into the hospital to work as a part of, because it was on the job training, I was sent to a cancer care ward, and within 5 minutes of my first day, the patient that I was looking after passed away.
No.
And I had no idea what I was supposed to be doing, and it was just really, I guess, a real journey for me. Like my next 8 weeks, like in that hospital ward, just the challenges and the things that I had to confront as a brand new nurse in training. The Alf Kretschmer Award was an award. It doesn't exist anymore, but it was something that the Queensland Cancer Fund did at the time, and it was actually about. It was a writing award. So it was an award where they asked for you to, put your writing skills to the test to describe your interaction with cancer. And so I wrote about my experiences as a brand new nurse in that first 8 weeks and kind of what I learned. So, and I was really bowled over by the fact that I won it. It was amazing. Yeah, and I've always loved writing, so It was also a wonderful affirmation that my writing resonated.
Do you think that 8 weeks of the experience or that previous life has changed the way of your career path in one way or another to be doing or what you are doing, but also some of the different career that you are having over the last decade or so?
I don't think, ultimately, after 7 years in nursing, I I left. So I don't necessarily know that experience changed my trajectory, but certainly I think there's probably was two learnings from it, and one is that sometimes you just should have a go. Like I entered that awards process just thinking, oh look, I'm just going to do it for the experience of doing it and to enjoy the process of doing it, and then I was like really pleasantly surprised.
Maybe not so much of the trajectory, but rather the direction that you are taking. I feel like I feel like maybe that takes you to the direction where you want to be the person who is giving the assistance and help to people rather than more just a commercial. Do you think that is somehow driven from?
Oh, look, I think it's probably just evidence of what drives me. So I guess what drove me to participate in that award is the same thing that drives me now. So I've always been a contributor. That's in my nature, that I'm interested in having an impact on the world around me and the people in it. And so my entire career has been around how can I contribute to have an impact. I think that's probably evidence of that. And also it's interesting because in a way I've come full circle in that I am writing a lot more now. So I am actually, just as in I had to be quite vulnerable in my writing then and share my personal experiences. And that is actually who I am and what I do now. So if anyone that's sort of seen my LinkedIn posts, they'll know that I'm pretty transparent. I'm an open book. I really just share my interpretation of the world and my experience within it. So, easy to say all that with hindsight. I don't think I had that insight back then at the time.
Wow. Well, let's get on to some of the books that you are doing. I'm sure we'll chat more about those things. Tell us a bit more about your current role as the CEO of Foodbank Queensland.
Yes. So the concept of food banks, I think, are quite well known around the world, although they can look different in different parts of the world. But Foodbank Queensland is a business-to-business organisation where we support about 350 frontline charities who are supporting their communities, and their communities who don't have enough to eat. So they're suffering from food insecurity. And so we have a complex network of food donors, and also we purchase certain types of food, and we make that available to our member network so that they can go about the business of supporting their local communities.
Wow. So 350 is in Queensland alone. Is that correct? That the network that you have to manage as a distribution point and a partner to help really achieving this goal?
Yes, 350 members in Queensland.
Wow.
So the overall reach is about 150,000 people a week. Works out as about 50 meals a minute is the kind of impact of our work, that we're kind of producing 50 meals a minute.
50 meals a minute. Sorry, what was the number that you just said?
Yeah, so 150,000 people a week are the end recipients of the food that we provide to our members.
150,000 a week. That is okay. Wow, that is a huge number.
It is.
I have to say I'm really surprised by those numbers. Do you think that is the common reaction that you are receiving in the country when you share some of those numbers?
It is the common reaction. It is a surprise to most people that that food insecurity is as widespread as it is. And so the most recent data is that last year in Queensland, about 440,000 households, so noting that there are multiple people in a household, but about 440,000 households in the year didn't have enough food. So, and about half of those households have children in them.
Wow. Is that a clear split in terms of that 440,000 in the regional country versus the metro? What was that split like?
Oh, look, the split is pretty much as you would expect around population density. I think that if we look at the drivers of food insecurity, it's predominantly a matter of income on one side. So it's not just unemployed, but it's underemployed. So people on low employed but on low incomes, and then on the expense side of it, it is cost of living pressures. It is the kind of housing situation that we have where rental prices are high. And you also see families in particular where there are unexpected medical expenses, where they might be coping okay, and then a member of the family becomes unwell, or that, if they're an income earner, their income is lost, or if it's a child that becomes unwell, there's high treatment costs. So it's predominantly a question of not having enough income to meet the cost of living.
Does that equally mean that this group of the people where not enough income to meet those objectives is actually way more vulnerable than those have no income, because it's harder for them to reach out to the Centrelink. It's harder to reach out for help. Equally, I think pride may equally stop them because they were doing okay, but change of the circumstances, it also may stop them because of the pride. So I'm curious to hear.
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. So for anybody to reach out for help, there's this crucial first step that has a big barrier there.
Yes.
And the barrier is the shame and stigma that come with not having, particularly if you're a family and you're trying to feed children. There's a lot of fear too that parents can think, oh, they might take my children from me if they find out that I don't have enough for them to eat. So there's fear as well. I think that sometimes people who don't classify themselves as, I'm not the type of person that would normally have to ask for this help. They may also, there's a lot of, maybe I'm not deserving of it. Someone else needs this more than I do. So that can prevent people from asking for help because they feel like, look, there's other people much worse off than me. I don't want to take something from those people who might need it more.
So the the demand side is sort of like explained now. What about the supply side? Like, how do you go to these big enterprise or organizations to ask for their donation, or to work with them in one way or another?
Yes.
Bring in the supply.
Yes. So there's a couple of ways. The thing that crosses all of it is that it is relationship based. So if we take, for example, we have relationships directly with growers in all of the major growing regions in Queensland. And they already have a product that is going to be ploughed back in or go to landfill. So when they're in their packing sheds and they're sorting anything that doesn't meet the specifications of retailers, something has to be done with it. So we approach that in a way that we make it easy for them. So we have to make sure that when we're asking someone to partner with us, that we're not creating additional work for them, that we are making it as easy as possible. So our processes are really important, that we can just fit in with how their farm sheds would usually run. With the major manufacturers or retail outlets, again, it's around trying to find where they have it's both where they have a problem, but also where they have a corporate responsibility remit. So they will have product that would otherwise go to waste, and they want to do something about that, and where they're offering a solution for them. I think then where that grows is as those relationships grow, then when times are difficult, they will provide additional donations over and above what is surplus to their needs. So it really is about developing the relationships and then seeing, what the partnerships can look like over time. But the logistics of it is also, it's very important that when you're dealing with, pretty major retailers and manufacturers, they want a process that is going to make sense for their network, and so you have to make it quite streamlined.
The other player or the party in the equation that I could think of is the logistic, right? The logistic in the sense of the transport of getting all of these, whatever that you have collected, you have bought, to those 300 partner. Queensland, and Australia is a large country and a large state.
Yeah.
It's probably not that easy to get that. How does that party come into play in that? I feel like it's almost like if I were to use the marketplace terminology to describe it, is like you have three-sided marketplace. You have the demand, you have the supply, and you have the transport logistic that you have to worry about. How that work?
Yeah, look, and I think you're touching on something really important here, because there is a supply chain and a food system for those of us who can walk into a supermarket and buy our groceries with our own money. And then what's happened in this country is that there is a second food system and supply chain for those people who don't have enough to eat. And so one of the pieces of work that Foodbank Queensland is looking at is how do we bring those two supply chains and food systems back together into one. So we certainly, there is a huge role for freight and transport in what we do. We have our own transport fleet and they're on the road every day. But also we do, we have to get the food from the donor to us, and a lot of the time we have to pay for that. And sometimes we can access lower cost freight or pro bono freight, but largely we pay for it. But the other important thing around some of those freight providers is the relationships that they have, particularly where there are rural freight providers, the relationships that they have with growers. They can and do introduce us to new growers who are in their network. So it's not a case of we can just rock up to a farmer and say, hey, we want to talk about you donating your surplus oranges. It doesn't work that way. You need an introduction,
absolutely,
and a way to, start that relationship and those discussions.
That makes sense. Now that we have the context of this really complicated business that you are in, I think it's so challenging with the three-sided marketplace. I have done the two-sided marketplace and I know how crazy it is, let alone the three-sided. My next question is, with this context, how do you use, or do you think data and analytics could come into the picture to help you solving some of these problems and alleviate this food insecurity on a large scale?
Yes, it's an interesting question, and my head goes to, we need to differentiate what we do at Foodbank Queensland what we're doing is we're providing a safety net. So once upon a time, food insecurity was an episodic thing. It happened in emergency situations, or it was a, limited time thing. But we're now in an environment where there is an intractable endemic of people who are chronically food insecure. So in terms of, the role of data, then analytics to solve that really goes to issues around, people's economic participation and how can data help to, maximise people's participation in the workforce, in jobs that pay sufficient income. But then if we look at Foodbank Queensland's role as providing a safety net, I think data can help do a couple of things. It can help you identify where the need exists. It can help you identify how that need is currently being met. And it can help you identify the ways in which that need is met well. So, for example, different communities will have different requirements in terms of the types of foods that are culturally safe and appropriate for them to eat. So not everybody either eats pasta or even knows what to do with that, right? So as a food bank, if we were to present a bag of pasta and a Napolitana sauce to someone who's come from, they may be a refugee, they may be used to cooking in a communal environment with very different ingredients, they may not know what to do with that. So data helps us understand who are the groups of people that need what we do, and that then, because we actually do purchasing, so it actually drives what we purchase and for what purpose. It can also help us. It helps us with our efficiency. That's the other thing. So, so efficiency is important, and it also helps us manage waste. So, as you can imagine, when you are operating using donated, the majority of our food is from donated sources. So when you're operating using donated food, there is oftentimes a more limited shelf life. So the enemy for us is time and the potential for that food to spoil. So efficiency in our operations is crucial to ensure that if we are rescuing food, that we get it to where it's needed as fast as we can, so that we don't end up having for us to send that to landfill or a third life.
Exactly. And speaking of efficiency, I think one of the thing that I could think of is, like, for example, the route optimization is one of the things that the food deliverer or the use of the freight or logistic company use optimizing from getting the things from point A to point B much quicker. But I think with the food as an additional factor, that is equally important. Where, how fast, but also the life of the food on the shelf as well.
Yeah. And certainly that route optimization. So in terms of our own transport fleet, it's all about, we know exactly how long we've got in a day in terms of our driver workforce. And it's about how do we optimize how they spend those hours to get as many collections from our donor base done in that day. And it's interesting because when I started nearly 3 years ago, there wasn't even any GPS tracking on our fleet. So we've come a long way in terms of understanding where our vehicles are, what their movements are, how to optimise, their routes, and even just things like because we have a different size trucks in our fleet. So it's even around how do we select the right truck for the right collection to optimise the space Like if we've got a 16 pallets worth of space in that truck, we don't want to go and pick up 12 pallets. We want to make sure that we're filling it with 16 pallets and use all of the space that we can.
That seems like there are so many use of the data in the freight scenario, like the efficiency that you just described. The other thing that I sort of like to think of is that I noticed is the timing. I once was I got so tired of preparing the food, so I decided to go on to order one of those meal delivery. With I think it's not exactly the one that from the shop to me, but one of those where you still have to put it into the microwave to cook it.
Yes, yep.
And one thing that I really interesting to me is I noticed that they deliver it in the middle of the night, and the more I think about it, it kind of like makes sense because it's the quiet time of any time in the road. You don't have to stuck in the traffic, so that sort of thing makes sense.
It's also
Do you
cool.
think that exactly, and also cool, exactly. Is that something that you guys also take into the picture in this using the data in that freight case?
Look, it's an interesting one for us because we currently we operate one shift a day, and there's a tipping point for us, and we know we'll come to it where we have sort of started to look at. When I say we're still on one shift a day, one general span of hours a day, and that we're not working a 24-hour round-the-clock operation. We've got staggering of shifts, but I think there will come a tipping point for us where it is an efficient decision to look at, operating at different times of the day and night. And look, I think we're coming close to it, and it's interesting because it's process that drives that. So one of the the thing that underpins all data is we're doing a bunch of stuff, isn't it, to create like we're working in a system, we're executing processes, and then the data captures what we did. We have implemented a new ERP system this year, which has really it's actually changed our processes a lot. And in looking at our change processes, that we're now faced with questions around, well, we actually can't do that at the same time of day now. We actually have to do that at a different time of day. So it's a bit chicken and egg in that sometimes the data and the systems drive the processes, and sometimes the other way around.
So apart from the use of the freight, the use case in the freight, and also the demand, can you give me any other example of like how you or Foodbank Queensland is using data and analytics to
yes, and look, and I guess in a few areas. So we've had quite a lot of digital transformation over the last few years. So one area of digital transformation has been around all of our workplace health and safety systems. And so we've got a really wonderful, we actually went for one of the world's best products, which, people wondered why we were aiming so high. But now it's been in for about 12 months. We're starting to ramp up how we can use it. What stories is it telling us about, for example, now we understand some of the behaviours of our workforce, and we can see when when the issue of safety is becoming less in their consciousness, and you can see that by, the odd, people will start to forget to log themselves in on the system in the morning. You can see that people's proactive recording of hazards, like before something gets to an incident, starts to drop. And we can have a look at those patterns and understand, where we may need to pull a few levers to help improve where that safety culture sits in people's minds. We are just starting to do some work at the very beginning around diversity and inclusion in our workplace. So that's very much in the beginning. But the other example is around, and look, we are transport and logistics and warehousing, so it goes back to the warehousing issue and around our inventory. So it's around understanding what working at capacity, defining that. What does that mean for us with our physical assets and the number of pallet spaces we have? What do we categorise as being full, if you like? So,
Yeah.
so every warehouse has to have the capacity to expand and shrink in its inventory in a way that doesn't compromise safety, reduce efficiency, impact on customer experience. And so we are now getting a really clear sense of what that means for us. And it's quite funny because we've got the numbers, and now, we sort of, there is some feisty but productive debate around. So I can tell you that today we are operating at 83% capacity, and so our warehouse manager would say that's at capacity,
Yes.
and our distribution manager says, well, it is, but here's a few other reasons why I think that number can flex today. And so the data's great, and then it's around how do you use it to have those discussions, and how do you use it to help you make informed decisions. So it's exciting territory for us because that new system's been in only for a few months. So every week we're uncovering new ways of using the data that we're getting to make good decisions.
Hey all, I just want to give a quick shout out about this episode. It's sponsored by the Embedded Analytic Program at DDA. And the Embedded Analytic Program is designed for senior manager and executive in the business team who want to integrate data science into daily business operation and use it to drive customer experience excellence and revenue. And book unlimited strategy session for a full year and start embedding analytics into the business frontline. For more information about this program, please refer to the description of this episode. Now, let's get on back to the interview. Now, before we move on to about making those informed decisions, I want to touch on one really important thing, which is that digital transformation and having this new system to help you to capture the process, the data that were not possible before, because digital transformation is the prerequisite of the data and the analytics. What has it been like after 4 and 5 months? Can you imagine that how go back to the past, live in the world? And what is your advice to the business who are in a similar territory? It's a physical business. Let's just say we are a food processing company. Why the hell do we need all of the digital or data stuff? What is your advice?
My advice is that you cannot possibly know everything at the beginning when you start, and that if you allow what you don't know to frighten you or scare you off, you'll never begin and you'll never realise the benefits. So I think taking the mindset that it is an iterative journey, that you will, in any digital transformation journey, there will be bumps, that the human aspects of it are more important than the technical aspects of it.
Yes.
And understanding, like, having a way to just be taking the pulse of the organisation very frequently as you are transforming, to understand how it's changing you. It's very hard when you're moving from an analog environment into a digital environment to really foresee the impact. You are very, your thinking necessarily can become more short-sighted, because, and the more you get into it, the more long-term your thinking can become. As you learn more and more around how that transformation is impacting on how you do your work, your kind of view becomes easier. The fog that starts to clear and you can see further ahead. So I think I think that's my reflection and learning, and don't expect it to be smooth sailing, because it won't ever be.
Can you give us one single biggest positive impact from this?
Empowerment.
Empower.
That if you have a team of people that are purpose driven and aligned with what the organisation is trying to achieve, that the transformation can be an incredibly empowering thing for them in how they go about doing their work. And it also, the other positive thing is it changes the way you think. It changes how you think about your future strategy. It changes how you make decisions. And you don't know until you do it how those changes are going, what they're going to look like. So it's exciting.
Can you give us an example, like it changes the way that how you think? I am trying to get down a little bit to create that picture people can visualize.
Yeah, so I think if you think about Foodbank prior to digital transformation, you do the same things that you've always done because that's why you've done them, and you're constrained in that there is a limit to how differently you can do things, because ultimately we all need good information to make good decisions.
Yes.
So one of our challenges has always been around how do we better service more rural and remote parts of Queensland. And our thinking used to be down the road of, maybe we need a second warehouse or a smaller hub in a more rural or remote location. With digital transformation, we better understand the journey of food. And so we understand where it's coming from, what its pathway through our warehouse is and where it's going to. And it helps you think on a more systemic level. So now we're starting to think, well, in fact, maybe we don't need a second warehouse out somewhere rural or remote or a hub. Maybe there's actually another way to do this, and maybe it's actually at a food system level. Like why can't we work with what is already there in local communities and use because we now have, for us as a charity, you have to be able to track your impact. That is how you attract funding. And so we've always been, nervous about initiatives where it was really hard to track or demonstrate the impact of what we were doing. Having the data that is able, or a system that is able to flex its way around pretty much anything we want to do and still be able to give us the tools to demonstrate our impact means that we're thinking in different ways around how we might achieve our strategy, but do it in a way that's better for communities and better for the people who need our services. Does that help? That's probably the most concrete one I can think of. Yeah.
No, it certainly helps. I think it paints a clearer picture for us to visualize, but also for many of those listeners, let's say, who are in the businesses that digital or data has never been the core part of it, who are looking to implement a new ERP system, who are thinking about putting in a digital transformation.
Yeah.
The other bit that I want to touch on is that you highlight that the human is an important factor in this journey. Can you elaborate on that, please?
So, I mean, fundamentally goes to people and change.
Yeah.
In that if you're going to make significant change and you want people to adopt a new way of doing things, then people need to understand the why, they need to know the what and the how, and they need to be part of the process of change. I think the other thing too around any digital transformation journey or project is it's all really great to have a project manager leading those implementations, but there is a point at which, and it should be earlier rather than later, at which the project manager is not the font of all knowledge and driving everything, and it's flipped the other way, and that the business is actually, and all of the users in the business are actually driving the project and driving the implementation. So, and that is what I mean about the human element, that you've actually, it's not something you do to people, it's something you've got to do with people. The other thing is that, people's, particularly if it's large scale transformation, people's position descriptions and roles can start to look different, and people get anxious. So if there's not enough information, but somebody just kind of knows, oh, well, that will probably largely be done online in the future, well, people start to worry, well, what will happen to my job? Sometimes the business doesn't actually know the answer to that question until they're a bit further down the track. So it's around being transparent and honest with people, and talking. So for us, we certainly foreshadowed that we knew it would change roles, and some people's roles, and then we also said, but we see it as it will create new roles. It's just the roles will be different. And so we've had quite a few people. We've had a couple of completely new roles now that we just have never had before, and a couple of old roles that are just really more redundant now. So, which has been actually created opportunities for people in our team to shift into new things, which has been really good.
I think creating that psychology safety is so important to convey the message that I don't know the answer yet, but we all know there will be some changes and there will be some impact. And so while I cannot tell you the answer, you can rest assured that we are going to do everything that we can to steer us into the right path, but ensuring that is a job for you in one way or in maybe in some way. How do you convey that sort of messaging? How do you create that sort of a psychology safety to the people as they are going through this journey of transforming the business with the new tech, with the new digital, all this sort of thing?
For us, it was around multiple communication channels in different ways. So, so we have a project update that goes out regularly, and then we layer that with so each one of our senior leaders is doing communication within their teams, and then we know our teams and we know our people. So we actually go, who are the people that are going to become anxious about this? Let's talk to them up front. So, and if we see them getting a little wobbly, let's make sure it's time for another catch up. So it really just is around, knowing your people and different layers of communication.
Wonderful. Now that you have all this ready and you have been integrating or capturing all this data and starting to integrating the data and the analytic into your process of making an informed decision, can you share with us what are some of the early challenges that you faced?
Yeah, that's a good question. One of the biggest challenges for us at the moment, because we are still in a state of change, so we have mostly physically outgrown the warehouse space that we're in. And we have a longer-term project where we have design and we will be building a larger warehouse, but that won't happen for a few years' time. And we need to make a decision around whether we stay in a single site model or whether we actually do need to operate a second site somewhere close to us. And there is and if we were to do that, which piece of the business do we slice off and put there? So we know so far, so it's around what do we know? We know that we wouldn't replicate a single site model in a second site. We know that we would be slicing off a piece of what we do, and we are still trying to get clarity. There are a few options on exactly, what data do we have to tell us which bit would make most sense if we were going to put something offsite, or in fact, is there modification we could do to our existing site that could sustain us here? So I think that that's one of the biggest challenges for us, because it's all around our core operations. And because we're still early in our journey around some of the data that we have, we're not quite there yet. And so I think the challenge there is impatience, in that we actually just want to be able to make a decision. And to be honest, we just don't have all the, I was going to say we don't have all the information, but look, we rarely have all the information to make a decision. We don't have enough information yet to make a decision.
That makes sense, and I can feel the urgency. I almost feel that urgency inside the bone, that we're hoping to make all of these things happen soon.
Yeah.
What are some of the most important steps you think on this pathway that you are driving, or you are steering the organization from having nothing in digital and having nothing in data, analytics, to now you have all of these things to start using them in the business?
Yeah. I think that top of mind for me is that when you have a lot of digital transformation, you also have to grow your internal capability to manage that once it's in place. So because then you have a bunch of systems in place, and who are the business owners for that? Who decides what changes are made to them? What is the process of making changes to those systems? How do we make decisions about whether they talk to each other? And then you have all of the issues around how do we ensure that we have good security posture? How do we understand? Because the more data you have, the more exposed and vulnerable you become. And it's around developing an understanding of what data do we have? What does that data mean to us? What would happen around our ability to operate if we didn't have it? Our reputational or other damage if that data became known outside of the channels in which it could or should be known. And what are our prevention, detection and response actions to protect the data that we have? So as a charity, we are absolutely at risk of cyber attack. Like it's really more and more charities are experiencing that. So, and the challenge for a charity is usually less internal capability around managing these things, and probably less focus from a budgetary perspective on, this is a necessary to have and a must pay for.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's my thing, that the digital transformation is great, but you have to also move into a digitally mature world in terms of how you manage how all of those systems are living in your organisation.
Absolutely. One interesting that I just pick up is that being a charity or non-for-profit organization, obviously one of the biggest constraint is the resources, whether it's the monetary resources or the human resources, and obviously the monetary resources translate into the human resources. So has anyone, or is it possible, let's say, for you to get the professional resources in a way like let's just say you pick up the bank, say, no, maybe not the bank is a horrible example because they have too much money already. They can just give you the money. But let's say you meet with this professional organization. They say, well, I I'm not a grower, I'm not a retailer, I can't give you food, but can we give
Mm,
you the human resources to come
mm,
in to provide you the
mm.
security, those sort of things. Perhaps that is another way of
Yeah.
thinking outside the box of getting obtaining the resources to help
Mm.
you achieve this goal.
I'll give you as a qualified yes to that. So if if you are dealing with an external organisation who is very mature in their
Mm,
community partnership model and have done a lot of that type of thing before, yes, sometimes that can work really well.
mm,
Oftentimes, what happens is organisations want to help, but they don't. They're not very mature in their own um, understanding of what that help looks like or how it gets managed from their end. And so I would say in the majority of circumstances, you get what you pay for.
yes.
So where I've worked with organisations who have very sophisticated pro bono community partnership programs, fantastic. Where I've worked with organisations where they wanted to do a good thing and they wanted to help, what I've seen is they've actually created more work for the
Mm,
charity, and then suddenly that help just disappears and leaves you three-quarters of the way through a job with no one to finish it. So I have a healthy skepticism um, about that, and I approach with caution.
that makes sense. That
Yeah.
makes What advice would you give to other businesses thinking of going to the digital transformation that is new in their world,
Mm,
using data and analytics that is new in their world, and they are just intimidated by what
yeah.
seems like a long journey to get there?
Yeah. Two pieces of advice. The first would be find other organisations who you have connections with who are in a more mature space and a bit more transformed, and ask them if you can go and have a look, because I think
Yes,
visualising it really helps.
correct.
Understanding the stories of, what data they're collecting, what are they using it for,
Mm,
seeing it in action. It's around understanding what's possible, and
mm,
talking to other organisations and seeing it helps. The other piece of advice would be start small. So if you have identified maybe, I don't know, 3 or 4 different areas of your business where transformation um, would be useful, pick the smallest one first and get that done, um, because you'll learn from that experience. Certainly, we did our first, we did 2 pieces of transformation first, which were much smaller projects, and that actually informed the other work that we did. So, and it also helped us to grow in our own confidence.
yeah.
Yeah. So we've probably done it faster than most. I wouldn't necessarily recommend doing it as fast as we've done it. Um, but and we also did it a little bit back to front, in that we learnt the hard way that we didn't quite have the end game set up ready to. Now we've got all these systems, and how do we manage all of that? So um, an integrated approach as part of an overall IT strategy would be the ideal thing. But that's not always how life works out, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Now, for those who listen to this and they want to help, what is the best way to get in touch and or reach out?
I think I use LinkedIn a fair bit, so I'm always open to a chat on LinkedIn, and if I'm local to someone, to have a coffee, or if I'm not local, to have a bit of a cup of tea on Zoom. So definitely look me up on LinkedIn, and happy to hear from people.
Good stuff. Anything else that I can give you a plug while you are still on air?
Oh, it's nice. Oh, look, not really. Just, I'm all about helping people to create their legacy. So that's, I work in a few different spaces and all of them are about that. So that's really who I am.
I agree. Now, my final two question to end this that I give to every single person. The first one is, what is your most important first principle?
That why you're doing something, that old Simon Sinek thing of start with why, that's important. But the only why you can know is your why. Don't spend too much time trying to understand someone else's why. Just look at their what, because you can waste an enormous amount of time trying to hypothesize about other people's why. Stick with your own why and look at other people's what. That would be my hot tip.
I love that one. I thought that is really unique angle to think about. I think I can relate to it in some way.
Yeah.
What is one book that you have read and thought it would have been better for your younger self?
This will sound really boring, but there's a book called Fiber Fueled by Dr. Will Bulsiewicz, and he is a gastroenterologist, and that book changed my life in terms of the way that I eat and my understanding of nutrition. That might have changed my life if I read it 20 years ago, because I have a couple of autoimmune diseases that I may have been able to head off had I known more. So, could have been healthier earlier.
I have a skin condition called psoriasis. So
yes, I know it.
I can relate to what you were referring to, especially after I gave up smoking probably almost a decade. I can't remember how long it is now, but probably 7-8 years, and I think it's one of the best decisions I have ever made. Is one. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jason,
for this wonderful sharing of your experience. I really enjoyed it, and think there
me
was
too.
Really nuggets in there. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jason.
Hello. If you enjoyed this conversation, hit that subscribe button so we can meet again. If you don't, I'll be stuck in an infinite loop. So pull that part by clicking the subscribe and help me out. You can further support us by leaving us a kind review from wherever you are listening. At the end of the year, I will choose a reviewer to send a special gift to, and it might just be you. Look forward to seeing you here next week for a new adventure, if I can find my way out of this endless loop. See ya!